Hello everybody, this is Gina from Chats and Chow, and I am coming to you today with a chat, not chow, not today. This is a video that I've been wanting to do for quite a while. It's really important to me. As you could tell by the title, this is about a healing testimony that I have, and there's a lot to it. I actually will leave a link to my blog where if you want to read about more details about my healing testimony, you can read it there. This is a video that I've been wanting to do for a very long time, and I wasn't sure. It seemed like every time I thought about doing it, I would go over it in my head, and I kept finding myself making excuses or trying to defend what happened, or I don't know. It kind of went negative on me, so I left it alone for a long time, but I think now is the time. Just to get into it, I was, after I was married in 2001, well, let me rewind a little bit more. For the most part, have always been a pretty healthy person, with the exception of digestive issues. I've always had issues digesting meat or dairy, always had heartburn, all those kinds of things. At one point I was diagnosed with GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, and esophageal spasm. And I had those on a regular basis. I would have it all the time. And when I was 28, I did have my gallbladder removed. My mother had hers removed. My grandmother had hers removed. It was a generational issue. So I'd always had digestive issues, but for the most part, highly functioning. But it seems like after I got married, I don't know what happened. And this is no reflection on my husband. It just, your mindset changes, your life changes, everything changes when you get married. It's just different. You're so used to living for yourself, and it's all about you, and now all of a sudden you've got this other human being that you've got to think about. And then when you have children, you have more little human beings that you have to think about, and it's no longer about you. And that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. But it just seemed like I downward spiraled after I had my son. I was married in 2001. I had my son in 2002, December of 2002. And it seemed I had a very sickly pregnancy. I had hypoglycemia very bad. Oh my gosh, my blood sugar was plummeting all the time. I lived on protein. I walked around with a peanut butter jar in my purse. I kid you not. So I couldn't have any kind of sugar, or I don't know, just everything seemed to go haywire on me. So I was very high protein. I lost a lot of weight. My doctor was pretty concerned. He's like, would you please eat brownies and ice cream, please? You need to gain some weight here. So, I was pretty sickly. And then after I had my son, I thought my body would return to normal. It did not. I actually got worse. And then I started developing, just to fast forward a little, I started developing something called multiple chemical sensitivity, which is basically where your immune system goes into high gear and starts resisting everything. It starts attacking everything. It started to attack my food. Anytime that I would have to take any medications, I would always have a hyper response. And then it got into smells and odors, and I got very, very ill. Anybody out there with multiple chemical sensitivity or environmental illness knows what this is, and you know what I'm talking about. You live in the fear that you're going to smell something and it's going to send you into flu-like symptoms. You're going to get weak. You're going to go into anaphylactic shock. I mean, it's horrible, absolutely horrible. I don't wish it on my worst enemy. Along with that came very severe fibromyalgia. I was in pain all the time. My body hurt from head to toe, and you couldn't touch me. I was in that much pain. Finally, I had been to all kinds of doctors, and back in the early 2000s, You didn't hear about multiple chemical sensitivity. Nobody knew what that was. I finally went to an alternative doctor who realized something was going on because my hormones were out of whack, my cortisol was high, and finally she had diagnosed me with the multiple chemical sensitivity. They were looking at chronic fatigue syndrome. That wasn't it. She said I definitely had the fibromyalgia. That was pretty obvious because I was just in pain all the time. I was weak and felt like I had the flu all the time, and it's a horrible feeling. So it got so bad that I was in bed for 3 months, and I kid you not, I was in bed for 3 months. I couldn't take care of my son. My mother-in-law was over helping me take care of my son, and it was just heartbreaking. You know, I was at my wit's end. I was really beside myself. And, you know, I had gone to church. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. I didn't grow up going to church or anything like that. I believed in God. I believed in Jesus. I believed, you know, the Bible was true, to the best of my ability anyways. It was all an intellectual experience for me, I think, more than a spiritual one. You know, I just accepted that as the truth. But I don't know that I had a full-on intimate relationship with the Creator. You know, I just, you know, I think I took everything at face value. After a while, in my early 20s, I started going to a specific kind of church, and I'm not going to mention what kind of church because this is not about denomination bashing or anything like that, because there's all kinds of people in the world. I don't like to label them. We're all different. But I went to a church that more or less did not necessarily believe in healing, that healing was for today. They said, well, if God can heal you, you know, if he's having a good day and he looks down on you and wants to have mercy, yes, he'll heal you. You know, otherwise you're suffering for Jesus. Just accept it. This is just the way it is. This is your lot in life. This is, you know, your burden. This is the you know, the cards you've been dealt. And I just would not accept that. I'm like, no, 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 no. I refuse to accept this. I said, when I read my Bible, I see Jesus healing people, and I see people getting healed. I want that. Why am I not having that? Why am I not seeing this in church? So my wheels were turning, and I was questioning everything. And I'm like, no, I don't think we're doing this right. Something's wrong. Something is very, very wrong. And I in no way want anyone to feel condemned, you know, if you've been seeking healing and it hasn't come for you, or anything like that. It's not about that. That's not what this video is about. I know everybody's struggle is different. Everybody is in a different place, and I want to be sensitive to that. I don't want to sound like, you know, I have the answers. You know, I'm all-knowing and have all answers and know everything, because I don't. You know, I have seen many people get healed, and I've also seen people die. And why that is, I'm not entirely sure. I don't have the answers. So I'm just speaking from my own perspective. I'm just speaking from my own experience. You know, I don't want anyone to compare themselves to me. And, you know, I don't want anyone to compare me to anyone else. So anyways, I was crying out to God desperately. I was under the care of 2 alternative physicians who just kind of shook their head and they were like, we just don't know how to help you. And along the way, I had gotten involved with a lot of alternative modalities. I've gotten into acupuncture, acupressure, biofeedback. I had gotten into a lot of these different kinds of things. I had gotten into herbs and tinctures and Chinese herbs, Chinese medicine, you name it. I was in it, I was on it, I was taking it, or I was doing it, and nothing helped me. I kept getting worse and worse and worse. And now, that's a question. You know, why are you doing all these good things for yourself and for your body and nothing's working? And a lot of it was, for me, I realized, because my problem really stemmed from a spiritual origin. You know, I had gotten involved with, you know, some New Age practices and different things, and realized very quickly, this is not working for me. I don't know that this is a good thing, because I've actually gotten sicker since I got involved with these things and not better. And I don't want to judge anybody. I don't want anyone to feel judged or condemned or anything like that. But this was my experience. So anyways, you know, on my sick bed, I was crying out to God and asking him, why am I not being healed? I'll be right back. Hello everybody, I'm back. Got a little crazy there for a few minutes. Everyone was coming home, making noise, eating, turning TVs on, and the phone was ringing. Got a little crazy there. So let me just finish where I left off here. So anyways, as I was saying, I was bedridden for 3 months, and I ended up just studying everything I could get my hands on. I was, reading my Bible. I was praying. I was just crying out to God because I felt like He was the only one that could help me. I was like, well, you made me, you created me, you know what's going on. Is there something in my life that I'm doing wrong? What is the problem? I had so many questions, and I was so willing to change whatever was the issue, whatever the problem was. And the short version of it is, as I said, I was under the care of 2 alternative physicians as well as a regular medical doctor, and they just couldn't help me. They didn't know what to do with me, really, because everything they tried either made me worse or it did nothing at all. And everyone just felt like, this is a God thing. God's going to have to help you because we can't. So the one alternative doctor had told me about a book that he had that had been given to him. Actually, one of my very good friends had given him this book, which is very strange, because she never gave it to me, oddly enough, but we hadn't seen each other in a while. It's kind of a long story, but we hadn't seen each other in a while, and otherwise I think she would have given me the book. But so anyways, this alternative doctor said, I've got a book I want you to read. And make long story short, with the book, he tried to get that book to me several times, and either his car broke down, his car broke down. How strange is that? He got very ill himself and ended up in the hospital. Everything that could try to keep me from this book and this information happened, and it was so frustrating. So finally, my husband went over to his house, even though he was really ill. He was willing to put the book out on the front porch. He was so sick, he ended up going to the hospital to get rehydrated because he had some horrific flu. So he put the book outside on his front porch for my husband to pick up. And that book is, now, first let me say this. I am no affiliate of this ministry in the sense that I don't benefit financially from this ministry at all. I know several people in this ministry, but I don't receive any financial gain or anything like that. I'm not going to get anything out of this by showing you this book. It's what helped me, and I know if I was still sick and somebody had something that helped them, I would want to know what that was. So this is the book. It's called, well, it's probably backwards on the camera, but it's called A More Excellent Way, and it's by Be in Health Ministry, and the head of this ministry is Dr. and Pastor Henry Wright, and I had the older version of this book given to me. And basically the book is about the spiritual side of disease. And without getting too heavy into it, he shows in this book how a lot of our spiritual makeup is the grounds for the manifestation of certain illnesses, of many illnesses really, and about the mind, body, soul connection and how it's all, connected. And this man is a Christian. He's not way out in left field somewhere. This is not New Age. He's actually very, very, he does have a doctorate. He's very sound and scientifically based. This isn't any hocus pocus kind of stuff. He pulls a lot of his information from like the Merck manual and doctors he's affiliated with, and they have all supported his information and his findings. And basically what he says is that when we are out of spiritual alignment, if you will, when we are not at peace with ourselves, or we are not at peace with God, or we are not at peace with others, there's a breakdown there. And that opens up the door for these, manifestations of illness that come into our lives. For myself, with the multiple, I'll just speak to what I had, the multiple chemical sensitivity or environmental illness that I had, and the fibromyalgia that I had was, a lot of it was stemming from a lot of pain and hurt and different things that I had experienced as a child. I don't want to really get too far into that, but there was physical abuse. There were people in my life that were supposed to take care of me that, there was sexual abuse by people that were supposed to care for me. There was physical abuse, there was verbal abuse. There was a lot of that in my childhood, unfortunately. And, when I became an adult, I put all that away and I said, that will never happen to my children. I will not carry on that garbage. I am a different person, and I'm not, going to associate myself with that kind of living. And I thought it was the end of it. Well, not really, because you carry that around inside of you, and it's there, and unless you deal with it, it begins to manifest. And when you get married, as you know, for some married couples, you're in the middle of trying to get to know each other. You're trying to figure it all out. What are you supposed to do and get along with each other and the whole bit. So in the middle of all of that, and in the middle of being pregnant very early in our marriage, and I just crashed. I just absolutely emotionally, spiritually, and physically crashed. And a lot of that had to do with the baggage that I brought with me from all of the things that had happened to me in my childhood. And this is I just want to say this, that the people that did hurt me, I have forgiven them. And now when I think about the abuse, there is no ping on the inside of me. I don't have flashbacks, or, I'm not reliving it in any way. It's a memory, but it doesn't cause me pain anymore. That's how I know I'm healed, and that is how you know you're healed, is when you can think about what happened without it physically affecting you. And I know that I have been healed. So I had to go through walking through all of that stuff and asking, not me asking for forgiveness necessarily, but forgiving these people that had hurt me, and releasing them, and some of them had already passed on, some of them had already died, but I still had to forgive and let go. I had to come to a place where I realized that God was my Father, and He loved me, and He wanted to protect me, and in no way should I take the faults of other human beings on the planet and put that on Him, but I was. The short version of that's what I was doing. I had a very hard time trusting anybody. There's so much fear and anxiety that I had. I had very bad panic attacks and anxiety, really bad. I had social anxiety. It was very difficult for me after I had my son to go into a public store with him for whatever reason. Having my child with me, I just felt so vulnerable and open, and going into an open place, and I was so afraid something was going to happen to me and I wouldn't be able to protect him. It was very phobic thinking, really. It was just absolutely crazy phobic thinking. And in all honesty, when I was younger, I'd never told anybody, but I used to have real bad phobias. Like when I would go to a restaurant and I would eat, I was afraid the food would be contaminated, or I'd be afraid there were germs on the door, or I would be afraid that the food wasn't cooked properly. If there was a French fry, my husband laughs at this. We still laugh at this, but now I'll take the French fry and actually eat it. But if there was a broken French fry in my bowl or on my plate, I wouldn't eat it. I'd be like, oh, somebody ate off that and they're trying to poison me. This is crazy phobic thinking, and I'm very embarrassed to even admit that I had that, but it's true. I wouldn't put my hands on a door because I didn't want to, expose myself to the germs. I was extremely phobic about everything. Everything. You know, my husband would leave and I would be, you know, terrified that something was going to happen to him. One day, right after we were married, he came home like a half an hour late and I lost my stuff. I mean, I was like, oh my God, where have you been? Oh, it was pitiful and embarrassing. Okay, so when I tell you that I think I was almost on the verge of psychotic with the phobias and the fear and the anxiety, it's true. So anyways, let me speed this up a little bit. I began to understand through reading Pastor Henry's book that I was not at war with myself. The Bible talks about how we're not battling against flesh and blood. We are battling against principalities, powers, and wickedness in high places. What had happened to me was this spirit of fear. You know, I do believe it to be generational because my mother had really bad panic attacks and anxiety. She had a horrible childhood. She was abused in many ways herself, and she's passed on now. She had a lot of stuff that, you know, unfortunately she passed on down to me. Not that she wanted to, but it's what happens when we don't deal with stuff. So I've been very, very vigilant in making sure that I deal with the stuff so it doesn't go down to my kids, or at least if they do experience it, they know how to shut the door on it and they know how to deal with it. So for me anyways, primarily it was a spirit of fear, and that's exactly what it is. And when I began to understand that from the time I was conceived in the womb to right up to that point when I was reading the book, I had been trained to think the way a spirit of fear would think. And when I came to the realization that I had to disassociate myself with that spirit of fear and stop accepting every thought that came into my head, that's what the Bible tells us, to take every thought captive, casting down vain imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself above the knowledge of God. And now the Bible was beginning to come alive to me. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is what God meant when he said this. So I really began to understand I was not my enemy. I'm not crazy. I'm not nuts. I'm not, you know, some kind of mistake on the planet, and I'm just a screw up. And that's what I used to think about myself inwardly. I would never admit it, but I didn't have a very high self-esteem. I didn't think too highly of myself, unfortunately, and that was probably the reason I allowed some of the people into my life that came into my life that were abusive and honestly had no business being in my life. And if I had been a little smarter and understood and wasn't so naive, those people would have been kicked to the curb very early on. I had some very bad relationships with men, and I look at it now and I'm like, how could I have been so naive? But low self-esteem, you don't think highly of yourself, you're always trying to look for the acceptance of people, and you keep giving people chance after chance after chance. And that's not to say that I was perfect either. I wasn't, you know, I was probably very insecure and clingy, or if I wasn't that, then I was the type of person that, you know, I didn't want to deal with you and I would just shut you out, and I would deal with it that way. So I just had a lot of phobic realities going on in my thought processes, and I began to realize that this is a spirit, this is an entity that I am at battle with. I'm not at battle with myself. What God created was good, and you know, what the enemy was trying to do and come in and destroy me with the spirit of fear, that was evil. So there had to be a lot of forgiveness, for me, a lot of self-forgiveness. I had a lot of self-hatred, self-bitterness, self-rejection, self-sabotage, a lot of it. And I really had to tell myself, I'm okay, and I am okay with myself. You know, and I'll be honest with you, it was very difficult for me to put my face on video. It's very difficult for me I've spoken publicly about my testimony, and it was a very, very hard for me because I felt like all the stuff, you know, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not thin enough, or, you know, or I'm too skinny, or all this outward things that were going on, and just, not putting myself on camera because not feeling worthy. Well, hello, little Skittles. Not feeling worthy, not feeling like I had something worth saying. There was such a battle going on. Even now, even though I know all these things, the voices are still there, and I still have to deal with a lot of it. But now I know it's not me. Now I can separate myself from the stuff and understand that what God created is good. And who cares if people see, my zits or my wrinkles or my flaws or whatever. Who cares? Who cares if they see, that I have a little chub on me or whatever. That was big for me. Big, 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 big. Because I've been very thin all my life, and after I had kids, I've got this chub. I'm like, oh my gosh, where did this come from? So it was a source of insecurity for me. And I'm still working on that. But now it's not out of self-hatred. Now it's more out of, okay, we need to be healthier. We need to make some healthier choices and maybe put the cookies down, things like that. But now it's not a hatred thing, a self-hatred thing. So anyways, my point was, I understood that I was dealing with a spirit. And so then I got involved with, honestly, I read the book. I never went down to Georgia to his ministry. He does have a ministry in Georgia, which eventually I did go down, but I didn't go down for probably several months later. But I read the book. I called my friend and I asked her, do you know of any ministries that believe like this, that teach this stuff? Because I don't know any, because if I'd have known, I don't think I'd be in the mess I'm in. And she did direct me to a ministry of a group, a prayer group, and I was so sick and so weak and so, just a mess, that even my father-in-law said, I honestly felt like we were going to end up burying you. I really didn't think you were going to pull out of this. So anyways, I got to this group, and they prayed with me. And I don't want to get freaky, but I'm just going to tell you what happened. At that point in time, I was very unsure about spiritual things and spiritual warfare and evil spirits and all that stuff. I just said to them, I know this is a spirit of fear. I understand that I've been dealing with this for a long time, and I just want it gone. So they prayed with me, and they commanded that spirit to leave in the name of Jesus Christ. Not hocus pocus crazy stuff. They did exactly what Jesus Christ did himself in the New Testament. That's what they did. That is biblical. It is irrefutable. And I know that there will be some that say, that's not for today. We shouldn't be doing that. Had I had believed that kind of theology and thinking, I would probably be dead right now. So I was very thankful that these people were willing to take a stand on the scriptures. And Jesus Christ himself said, these things will you do, and greater things will you do, because I go unto the Father. And he was speaking to his disciples, and he very clearly said that he had a fold that, he had sheep that were not of this fold when he spoke to his disciples, meaning he had other sheep that were going to come on in later. Well, that's us. So I do very much believe that we are to cast these things out in the name of Jesus. And that we are dealing with spiritual elements, and that a lot of our sicknesses and illnesses and physical malaise and all of that come from bad thinking, come from fears and phobias, and these aren't just feelings and emotions, these are entities and spirits. And that's where I finally got free, because I understood that this isn't just the way I am. This isn't just the way I think. This isn't just, well, my mother was that way, my father was that way. No, I can change. And I have, very much so. I'm a completely different person than I was in my 20s. I was a wreck in my 20s. Quite honestly, I was really a wreck. Now I'm so much more peaceful, and I've gone through so many things. Both my parents have passed on. My mother died in 2006. That was very hard to deal with, but at the same time, when she died, I had nothing but love and peace in my heart for her. And she was a big catalyst, a big part of my angst and anxiety, because she had me exposed to people that she shouldn't have had me exposed to. But I forgave her for that, and I love her, and I understand that, She herself was abused, and, you know, you can't give what you don't have, so to speak, unless you know the Lord, unless you know God. Then you know He is love, and you can get that love from Him, and that's exactly what I've done. And I'm a much more peaceful person now. And even after I got healed, I was still going through my stuff, still going through issues. My husband and I actually divorced, and we were apart for a handful of years, you know, and then we, you know, had to work through a lot of our own stuff and junk, and we ended up getting remarried in 2014, and we're back together, and our kids are happier, you know, we're happier, we're more at peace. We've really gone down the road of hard knocks and understood that what love is, that love isn't just, you know, lovey-dovey feelings. It is a decision. It's a decision that you make every single day. Married love is a decision that you make, that you're going to love that person, you're going to take care of that person, and you're going to look out for the best interest of that person. And you're going to do all that you can to make them happy and to help them become a better person, and vice versa. And that has taken a long time to get to, okay? I love my husband. He is a very good man. I am blessed to have him. But man, were we stubborn and locked horns and knocked heads a lot. But we've come a long way. And we still have a ways to go. But now the physical illnesses that I had are out of the way, and now we can actually have a marriage. You know, he was very angry when I was sick. Instead of being supportive, he was actually very angry, didn't understand, frustrated. Why is this happening to me? Why is this had to happen to my wife? You know, so he had to deal with a lot of his stuff too, a lot of unloving stuff. And he has, and he's a much more understanding person now than he was, you know, 15 years ago. So let me try to wrap this up here. So anyways, again, this is the book. It's called A More Excellent Way by Dr. and Pastor Henry Wright. The ministry down there is absolutely phenomenal. I ended up, after I got healed, it seemed like after they prayed for me, all of a sudden my body started healing. I started to do things that I couldn't do. My muscles were so atrophied that I had a physical therapist come in, and she was working with me on a regular basis, and she said, I don't know what happened to you, but what would have normally physically taken 6 months only has taken you a few days. She goes, I've never seen this before. And I told her what happened. She wrote all the information down, the book, everything, and she said, I had to look into this. I said, it changed my life. So she saw physical changes in me that were supernatural, that because she knew how atrophied I was. And it was completely cleared up, literally. I came home that day after prayer and picked my son up for the first time in 3 months. And I just started crying and bawling because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm holding my baby. And it was amazing because I couldn't do that before because the fibromyalgia had me so locked up and in so much pain I couldn't even hold my own child. So it was gone. It was completely gone. And now that is not to say that this stuff does not try to come back. But when it does, I stop myself and I say, all right, something's going on here. And I realize that I am stressing out, I've got anxiety, something's going on, I need to deal with this, I need to take care of this. So that's what I do, is I deal with that problem, I deal with that issue, and I'm like, no, this is not coming back, and I grab hold of it, and it leaves, and it's gone, and it stays gone. So, you know, I just really wanted to let you know that there is hope. There really is hope. You don't have to suffer, that there really is a God in heaven that hears our prayers, who answers our prayers, who hears us. And if we're honest, you know, He will help us. So, I also want to say that this ministry doesn't just deal with multiple chemical sensitivity. They deal with everything, with all kinds of cancers, all kinds of, oh my goodness, all kinds of things. Diabetes, sugar issues, back pain. I mean, I've seen all kinds of things healed, you know, but I honestly also have seen many people pass on also. So I don't want to say that, oh, this ministry is the end all You know, there are some people that are just totally, just really, really stuck in their stuff and have a very hard time separating themselves from their disease and from their illness. And they, you know, it sometimes becomes a part of their personality. It becomes a part of who they are, and they don't know how to separate themselves from it, you know, and I understand that. And I, you know, so I'm very sensitive and very aware of that, you know, and again, I don't want to condemn anybody in any way. I want to be sensitive to that. But also what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link below on, I wrote out my entire testimony in 3 parts on my blog, and I will leave a link to that so that if you are so inclined, you can read in detail everything that happened and maybe understand it a little bit more. You know, so I'll leave that on there, and I'll also leave a link to Pastor Henry's website and his ministry, and I just highly encourage everyone to look into it. A lot of our diseases are not necessarily what we eat or our genetics. Oftentimes it's our thinking, you know, like Pastor Henry says, you have stinking thinking, and I really had a lot of stinking thinking. Now, are there genetic things? Of course there are, but those are also, I've seen people with genetic markers, and when they dealt with their stuff, they were gone. So, you know, I just want to give hope to anyone out there who is suffering with an illness of whatever it is. And, you know, if you want someone to talk to, or someone to pray with you, or someone to just listen to you, you know, I will leave a link to my email, or leave a comment below, or, you know, leave some information where I can get a hold of you or whatever. I'd be happy to do that. And another reason for me starting this channel was exactly for this purpose. When I thought of Chats and Chow, obviously I love to cook. I love to create with food. You know, I do have a creative side that I like to express, and I do that through food, or through music or writing, or, you know, those are my things. Those are the things that I like to do. But the chat part was primarily this, my healing testimony that I wanted to share with everybody. This was big. And, you know, I'll also have further chats on different things. I really don't want to go too deep into religious, religious arguments or political arguments or anything that would divide people. At this stage in the game, our world, our nation, where we're at, we just need some peace and some understanding. It doesn't mean that we compromise our convictions or anything. It just means stand on your convictions, but do it in love. You know, don't be hateful. So there's a way to do it without being hateful. But I'm not into the political stuff. I'm not into necessarily the denominational bantering that goes on. You know, I am a believer in Jesus Christ. I consider myself a disciple of Jesus Christ. I pray, I read my Bible, I pray for my family, I pray for my nation, and I do my best to try to stay out of the fray. I'm an extremely opinionated person by nature, and trust me, I've argued with the rest of them on Facebook. I've gone through that whole thing, and I'm like, you know what, I need to stop. I'm not going to change anybody's mind here. So my chats will hopefully be words of encouragement and uplifting, and you know, maybe how I deal with things or how I might look at things, you know, things along those streams. And you know, I might even do some, I don't want to say teaching, but maybe some expounding on some things that have come to light for me in some areas of, you know, whether it's fear or anxiety, and how to get out of that, how to get free from that. So anyways, I do hope that you find some encouragement and some hope in this video. I hope that you'll look into this information and into this ministry, and if I can be of any help or encouragement, or just you know, an ear to listen to, you know, some ears to listen, or just someone to pray with you, I would be happy to do that. You know, so that's pretty much it. And I just wish everybody a lot of love and happiness and peace and healing in every possible way, mentally, physically, spiritually. So anyways, you have a blessed day, have a blessed life, and we'll be back with some more cooking videos. I've got some more good stuff coming up, I think, which, you know, I try to put some recipes out there that are different, you know, so you're not always seeing the same old thing. But, so anyways, we just hope this channel brightens up your day somewhere along the line. So anyways, have a great day.